As most of you know, Cedar Fair never invests in parks that have lower attendance. These parks include Michigan's Adventure, Valley Fair, Worlds of Fun, and the topic of this video, Dorney Park. Dorney Park had plans leaked, and it is now known that Dorney Park will be receiving a 2024 coaster. What is this ride, and what does it mean for the company? Here's everything you need to know about the new 2024 Dorney Park coaster. So what do we know about this coaster? Basically, Dorney had their plans leaked for a new coaster in this section of the park. This new coaster is set to be 162 feet tall and located right where the old Stinger coaster used to be, which was removed in 2017. However, unlike when we thought Dorney would be receiving a new wooden shuttle coaster, Possessed is actually staying in the park. You can see it on the plans released here. These plans also show where the station building will be, right across from the flying scooter ride and restrooms. Also, this whole coaster, evident by the footers, replaces no ride and instead is located in this grassy plot of land where Stinger was. Additionally, you can see the maintenance shed of the coaster stretching off the left side of the station, so unless the coaster has the transfer track before the lift hill will be facing east, or towards the rest of the park. A Google Earth rendering should be shown right now. So, with a 162-foot tall lift hill, a relatively short out-and-back style layout, and plenty of space, there are quite a few possibilities. So, what are they? Let's dive in. One of the first predictions released was a Gravity Group wooden coaster. This was because back in, I believe, 2018, Dorney Park released plans for a wooden shuttle coaster similar to Switchback. However, once the footers were released, we saw it was a complete circuit coaster. What Dorney really needs is a steep coaster that has a great drop. Steel Force is okay, but the drop is underwhelming and the ride experience feels slow compared to other hypers. One of my first predictions was a B&M wing coaster. The lift hill would match up with a ring-over drop near Possessed and would be great in the skyline and also a cool visual near the paths. However, this ride would most likely be the shortest wing coaster. After a wing-over drop, the ride would head back towards the station, passing it, then turning around. There could be a couple near-miss elements, especially near the end of the ride where the track dives under previous track. So a short wing coaster wouldn't really bring a lot to the table, considering the park already has many rides focused on inversions. Dorney, as much as I hate to say it, needs a ride with a specific trick that separates it from other parks in the area. One of these would be the new Surf Coaster. This would be one of the newest coaster models, a first for Cedar Fair, a launch coaster that Dorney could use, and a very unique ride experience. This addition from Cedar Fair would introduce the Surf Coaster to the market even more, and if it does well, I wouldn't be surprised if Cedar Fair invested more in the model. The nearest stand-up is only an hour away at Six Flags Great Adventure, but that's an old and unpopular stand-up. Imagine the launch out of the station straight into a hammerhead turn, into a couple of inversions, a vertical loop, and a helix near the end of the ride. This would fit with the footers really well, actually. However, Cedar Fair's addition for this would have to rely on how Pipeline performs. If Pipeline is a flop, which it very well could be, Dorney Park might be hesitant to purchase such an expensive ride. Could it be a flying coaster? I think that this is the least likely option, but it could have a lift hill and instead of a curved drop, it would do a vertical drop into the lying position, like a half of a pretzel loop. Then the rest of the ride would include a couple of ladder flies and a loop like on a Flying Dutchman. It could even include a few near misses with trees, and maybe even a near miss with the track when it flies closely to other track, near the end of the ride. This would introduce many unique elements, provide a more intense flying experience to the nearby Superman, and would also bring more positives to Dorney. But these three predictions are the only three that really make sense for what the park needs. This park doesn't need a launch coaster in this location. They need a good standout coaster that's different from the other inverting coasters. And no company besides B&M would build this because of the height, space, and Cedar Fair's relationship with other manufacturers. However, the most likely prediction actually fits perfectly with the park and layout and will eliminate Six Flags from ever receiving this model. And this model is a dive coaster. Someone at Park Fans made this mock-up of a dive coaster that fits perfectly with the footers shown. It's a mini dive coaster, but will be the perfect addition. Let's talk about this layout. Immediately exiting the station, the dive coaster heads up the steep lift hill, reaching a height of 162 feet facing Possessed. And this is the only dive coaster in North America to not turn before the drop. Instead, the lift hill faces the same direction as the drop. Riders hang, looking at the rest of Dorney Park before releasing into a tight drop into an Immelman. That's right, this dive coaster will start exactly like all of the other dive coasters in the States. This Immelman will be right next to the paths of the park, making for a fantastic visual. Exiting the Immelman, riders dive under the main drop and head up into a left 0G roll. This should make for a hang time filled inversion with some possible airtime as well. But don't worry, this dive coaster, unlike what Valraven attempted, should actually have airtime near the end of the ride. After this 0G roll, riders briefly turn to the right before entering the second tilt incline inversion in the park. The first was Hydra's incline dive loop, and the second is this more common incline vertical loop. Think of what Rougarou has at Cedar Point. On a dive coaster, this should be more interesting feeling because of the wider trains. I think that this will be a fantastic inversion full of intense positives, just like Rougarou's loop. After this, the dive coaster takes a right-handed turn into an almost RMC sort of element. The train takes a twisted airtime hill over some later track. Since this is still a concept rendering, this could easily be a corkscrew or even better, a hang-time-filled roll over the track. This should cause a minor lateral whip while also popping guests a little bit out of their seats, creating a fantastic and unique moment. Following is just a typical helix, but the banking is pretty sharp and it's a tight helix. So unlike some other dive coasters, this helix should bring the positives, a force lacking in Dorney Park except for some moments on Talon. This dive coaster drops underneath the previous S hill in an almost airtime moment before rising up into an aggressive floater hill into the brakes. This floater hill will be the strongest airtime moment on the coaster. So overall, this dive coaster is very, very short. However, it could honestly have better airtime than even the hypercoaster in the same park. Steel Force really lacks on that airtime, and this dive coaster actually has some pretty surprising floater airtime and ejector near the end of the ride. It also includes some of the best dive coaster elements, though. These include a whippy roll, a nice drop, and some airtime near the end. This is also good for Dorney, getting us some new forces such as positives and twisted airtime into their ride lineup. Capacity also shouldn't be an issue. Even with the mid-course, the ride can have 2 trains on the track, which for a park with low attendance like Dorney, it should be okay. But one of the best things about this coaster is now Six Flags Great Adventure can't build one unless they go bigger. We know Six Flags is interested in dive coasters, evident by Cliffhanger last year. Six Flags Great Adventure was a park that was predicted to get one, and now, unless it's over 162 feet, Dorney will have the more popular ride. What does this mean for Cedar Fair's future investments? I think that Cedar Fair is finally seeing the potential for growth in the smaller parks near cities. With Zambezi Zinger being built at Worlds of Fun this year and this coaster opening in the following year, I wouldn't be surprised if Valley Fair and, dare I say, Michigan's Adventure get a coaster soon. These smaller coasters from big models and companies will be big hits at these smaller parks and would probably draw in bigger crowds than the same coaster at a larger park. In conclusion, Dorney Park's new coaster, most likely a dive coaster, will be a huge hit and might start a new beginning of additions for Cedar Fair. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment what you think of Dorney Park's brand new dive coaster and have a great rest of your day.